Hey, boys and girls, back again. Boy, there's lots to chat about. Where to start? Um, I'll do the quick house cleaning. The quick house cleaning, because every time I say house cleaning and I do it for 10 minutes, it's not good. So there's a quick house cleaning this time. The quick house cleaning is uh, Speaker of the House got vacated today, removed. First time that's ever happened. It's a story. It's a news. I mean, that's a story. And what's interesting about it is there's plenty that's interesting about it. I mean, look, when he got the gig, like no one ever has trusted Kevin McCarthy as far as they could, as long as they could keep on sight, I suppose. I mean, McCarthy's one of the great. We're in a time of great lying. He's not maybe the leader, but he's up there. An incredibly no one could trust him, right? But unbridled ambition, like so many. Congress is ugly that way. And hey, listen, last Speaker of the House was about an unbelievably ambitious person, and did some okay, but boy, I was always that level of ambition by itself is hard. Anyway, when McCarthy got the gig, was it 15 rounds to finally get the gig? When he finally got the gig, he had given away he just negotiated away any leverage he might ever have again. That's the only way he had the gig. And then, interestingly, he made a deal to keep the government open so the government didn't fall, totally do a shutdown. Okay, that's good. But that wasn't good enough for the Uber MAGA that wants government shutdowns because it wants to damage and destroy or tear down, burn down all government. McCarthy's interesting because when he gets to that brink, he doesn't. Sometimes, he's had moments where he didn't do the unbelievably terrible thing. And he got a deal done with the Democrats. The next day after he made the deal with the Democrats, he went on, I think, Face the Nation and said how terrible the Democrats were. All while this was happening, some of his own guys said they were going to put up this vote to vacate. And so they did. And I don't think anyone thought it was, I thought it was maybe 50-50, but thought probably McCarthy would keep his job. McCarthy didn't keep his job. And there was some, I guess, movement to try to get some Democrats to maybe save him. And after what he had just pulled, Democrats were like, you fix your own mess, and would not save him. The Democrats didn't put him there, though. This was, some of his own guys who cannot be controlled because they are uncontrollable. They don't believe in anything. Matt Gaetz, Jesus. And what is Gaetz into? Why is this a good play for Gaetz? Look, I think somebody from the Washington Post, I think it was, I'm trying to remember which reporter, which it was a WAPO reporter, Leanne Caldwell, mentioned today that, that Uber MAGA wing of the party knows, they have to know that no speaker can give them everything they want, right? So even if they try to give them everything they want, it's not going to go past a Democratic Senate, and it's not going to pass, no Democratic president's going to sign it. You're not going to. So they've got to know that. They know that already. So what's this all about? And I think it's about personal grievance. They all hate each other. And I think what it's really about is maybe I'll get some attention and be on TV. I think that's what this is all about. I want TV time. Right after all this happened, Gaetz went and found reporters. Couldn't wait. Was campaigning on it immediately, and there were Republican members of the House saying what a terrible thing it was for him to campaign on this, trying to raise cash on this, because Trump would never do that. Anyway, it's a mess. I thought McCarthy would run again, but McCarthy says he's not running again. And I don't think it matters who's in charge, because they're not going to pass anything. They're not passing anything. The politics of it isn't changing. It's just who's going to be the figurehead, I suppose. You know, Boehner left because of this craziness. Paul Ryan left, and luckily hasn't been back. But I mean, people have just left because they couldn't. You know, started with the Tea Party. You know, it was a limited government, and then there was a no government, and now it's we want to destroy civilization. It's the same movement, and it can't. So that's ugly. The other one was I said I was going to talk long about housekeeping. The other one was Trump got a gag order today because he accused one of the clerk in the judges. One of the judge's clerks he accused of being in a relationship with Chuck Schumer, which is kind of, it's a kind of funny one. It's kind of funny. I can't imagine Chuck getting it on, man. You know, so, but here's the thing. So the judge, finally one of the judges couldn't take it anymore. I thought it was going to be Chutkin, but for one of the judges finally couldn't take it anymore. And he slapped a gag order on him. You know, you won't talk about me, you won't talk about my staff. I think now the press is going to go crazy about this and talk about the judge. But a judge doing a gag order is a commonplace thing. If you get out of line, they slap a gag on you. If you keep talking and doing stuff you're not supposed to do against the judge's orders, they throw you in the jug for a month. If you don't like that, you keep doing it, he'll throw you in the jug for 2 months, 3 months. They don't care. They have that power. And it's used all the time. Gag orders happen all the time. So there's nothing that what the judge did is what judges do. It's eminently reasonable. That's not the story. The story is that Trump keeps doing this. The story isn't the judge. The story is the guy who does this stuff and thinks this is okay. Anyway, so there's a lot going on. Pay attention to it. A couple now let's get to the meat. There's a couple things. One is I had the misfortune of bumping into an Adam Neely video. Maybe I'm in a good mood tonight, guys. I don't know. Neely. Look, Neely's very bright guy. Does not do a bad job, but he really doesn't. That being said, and this is a matter of personal style, although one major disagreement with him, but a lot of it is personal style. I just find him tough to take. I think he comes off very condescending and very high-handed. And he's convinced there are answers to everything in an aesthetic realm. He thinks there are answers, very clear-cut answers to everything. And he has all of those answers. It's great. You win all the arguments. Yeah, it must be wonderful to have it all figured out. So that part of it, of Adam's thing, I find very hard to take. I don't like being talked down to him. I grant you that's superficial. Okay. That's the superficial side. Look, sometimes you like somebody, sometimes you don't, and I just don't like him. While I grant that he's a very bright guy, and I think he often makes very good points that I don't agree with, that I do agree with. But there is a tendency, an overwhelming sense of what he does is that, there are very, very specific answers here, and let's go to town on them. And that's a difficult thing to do. This is not math. This is not, dealing with the humanities. And that's really what we're talking about, the arts and the humanities. When you're starting dealing with the arts and humanities and thinking that there is an absolute, answer in almost algebraic sense, I think is a mistake. I think philosophically is a mistake. That's much more the realm of relativism. And is there tension there? Yes. Things Neely gets right, for instance. It's not that Neely gets it wrong so much. Well, I think he goes too far in a particular direction. His point, there's a lot to be said for that. I like musicology. Okay, I do like a differentiation in styles, knowing what those differentiations are, knowing what the currents and what the cultural, what the streams were that were mixing or not mixing or staying apart, or what they were influenced by to get you these particular styles. It can be very instructive, and I think it can really help you understand music better. And I think look, there's no hard and fast boundaries, but I think there are certainly fuzzy boundaries where we leave one thing and we enter another thing. So people say, all music's music. It's all the same. No, it's not all the same. And it's really important to have that there's never anything gained from, let's be more ignorant. If we were just more ignorant, everything would be great. I mean, that can't be it, right? And so Neely's going in a direction that I'm already sympathetic to, and I'm already like, okay, that's fine. And then I just think he takes it a couple steps a little too far, and a little farther than anything I can be comfortable with. Really putting a fine point. And I'm like, okay, you can get close, and then you've got to deal with the uncertainty principle. You've got to leave some room for the uncertainty principle, and you've got to just let it. There's got to be some floating there. There's got to be some area of air, and Heisenberg needs his space, and you can't absolutely. And I think that's when we get into trouble. Now, what was Neely talking about? Neely was talking about Laufey. I think it's Laufey. It's not Laufey. No. Anyway, I think, but you know who I'm talking about. And is that stuff jazz? I gotta tell you, I don't have a real problem with this person. There are people, something new comes along or something that seems fresh comes along, and a lot of people get on the bandwagon. And then there's a ton of people who get angry about the people who got on the bandwagon. Hardcore jazzers are never gonna like what she's doing. Okay, and I understand that, I guess. I think a lot of that just comes out of jealousy. They don't like the fact that she's successful. Is she doing anything that anybody else couldn't do? No. But, look, in her defense, is it jazz? I think it's more pop music than it is jazz. Does it borrow strongly from jazz vocabulary? Clearly. I don't have a problem with that. Here's a thing, too, to keep in mind. Once upon a time, in the days of Ella Fitzgerald or Louis Armstrong, a lot of jazz and popular music at one point were the same thing, and then sort of drifted apart, but they were always sort of interrelated there for a long time. Because jazz was part of the popular vocabulary, the musical vocabulary of the time. Just like Broadway shows tunes were. And they all intermixed. Good luck trying to unthread that. But that sound has not been part of popular music for a very long time. Okay? I think a lot of us who play jazz, I mean, good Lord, how many times did I play every standard known to man that, that she is currently doing, or bosses that she's currently doing? Um, if properly introduced, I think most of us who played that music have thought this our whole lives. If the big and different machine decided that they were going to push that particular style, at any time they could make it successful. A lot of this has to do with the marketing. What's successful is what, and it's herd mentality. And once someone decides, oh, this is the direction everyone's going in, and then it all gets pushed that way, then that's the direction it's going in. It doesn't do it all that often on its own. It's usually somebody's decided there's a buck to be made, and so, now we're all listening to this, or we're all listening to. So there's a lot of that. It's not just based on, purely on the sound. So there's so many takeaways about this. Pardon me. There are whole generations now, more than one, that have no familiarity with jazz. I mean really, not jazz as it is now so much as jazz as it was. People have a romantic notion about what jazz was as it was, zoot suits or something, right? They have a sense of it. They can't put their finger on it, but they have a sense of it. And so Laufey is playing My Funny Valentine, and people are so happy to hear My Funny Valentine, which is considered, to jazz musicians like a kind of kitsch. It's been played too much. It's a cliche. But if you've never heard it before, Misty, she plays Misty, and people go, oh, they never knew Misty. And if you've never been introduced to that music and it's your first time, it's very effective. Of course, that stuff was great. It become a cliche that we later think of and we put down only because they blew up so much, and then we've moved beyond that. These people never had the experience in the first place. It's the first time they're encountering that gorgeous stuff. Right? So if there was somebody just doing bosses and playing Rodgers and Hart or something, I mean, come on. Those are gorgeous tunes. Gorgeous shit. Really gorgeous stuff. So if you've never experienced that before, they're experiencing it for the first time. They don't know why they like it. I have a feeling that they're probably getting turned on to is a richer harmonic vocabulary that's just so much better than what they're usually listening to. And oh my God, this is, it's a better drug. So I don't knock her for popularizing that. And, but it's never going to be 1956 again. It's never going to be 1962 again. It's going to have to be a recreated version, today. But there's nothing new about it, right? She's not some great innovator. If someone comes to the jazz musician going, wow, this stuff will blow you away. I've heard this new great stuff, and they turn people on to that. No. They'll all know better and just be like, oh my Lord. But I'm not angry at her. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. Jazz people it'll be vicious how much they despise this person. And they despise her. I will guess they will despise her for being popular. The greatest sin apparently you can commit for jazz people at this point, I guess, is to be liked by people. That's really bad. You got to be in the trenches like the rest of us. There's a lot of that. It's one of the reasons I'm more than leery. I'm not leery. I just think it's hopeless. The jazz community has some very strange ideas, and I'm a jazz guy. But man, I'm not trying to make them happy because they can't be made happy, unless it's one of their own who's just as much. No one knows, and their music is affecting nobody. Hey, this person's actually affecting people. It's okay. I don't think it's I don't think it's don't think she's creating great art, but it's okay. There's room for that. I really don't have a problem with it. Is it jazz? It's certainly jazz light. Okay? You can't, if you're hardcore, it's not hardcore. It's very much jazz light. But if you're using those harmonies and yeah, it kind of is. It's just not, it's more, look, it's bubblegum compared to most jazz. But what most people consume is so much more bubblegum than what she's doing that she seems comparatively heavy. She's only heavy if you've been listening to pop music exclusively, your whole life. And then you bump into that and you go, wow. Look, that's okay. I'm not knocking people for having that experience. I'm happy that they're having it. Yes, there is no shortage in every town. Maybe not every town. Put it this way, in every state, you will find several groups, all sorts of jazzers who will play, who could do what she is doing and probably do it better. But for whatever reason, the packaging and it came together. Also, look, I understand she's Icelandic. Her background, I believe, is she was I guess a Chinese immigrant to Iceland. Okay, but I've been to Iceland, which is one of my favorite places in the world, and Iceland is more likely to be inquisitive and check out cool music than say anything going on in the United States. So they found it, and they found this person amongst them who's doing this cool stuff. I think it's great. It's fine. I don't think it's great, heavy stuff and that you get all concerned about it. And if you don't know anything about jazz, then if that's your gateway drug, great. Then you'll go and you'll listen to better stuff and you realize, oh, wow. Most of us have gone through that. Anyway, this topic lends me into next topic. Next topic is, and it's again, there are tendrils between Neely who fine points things just a bit much for me. I'm not angry at Adam Neely, who I think, look, I'm sure if I met Adam Neely, I bet you I would be very impressed. He's probably a very nice guy. I don't think he doesn't come across as a bad guy. Sometimes his manner online, it grates on me. Okay, but I'm not angry. He does a lot of informative stuff. In fact, look, to his credit, even if you disagree with Adam Neely, you sit there and go, okay, well, that's a good point, and that's a good point, and he's right about that. But okay, but boy, he did make some good points in the first place, and he made you think and clarify your own thoughts, even if they are different. So there's a place for all that. Anyway, whatever. I don't get all that wrapped up about it, frankly, but I saw something the other day. I saw an interview. These were separate, but they were making the same point. It was Willem Dafoe talking about acting, and he was amongst actors, and he was being interviewed somewhere by an actor, probably at some acting school. So it was a live thing, and they were talking about, what is your method, and I love Dafoe. One of the things he was talking about was, I'm not sure I believe in a method. I mean, I believe in a method for me, but there's this method, there's this dome, there's this, there is this way, and that's it. And he's like, he doesn't think that's true. And he knows a lot of actors. He's worked with a lot of actors, and they have different methods. And he thinks that's fine. It's very individual. And he's fine with that individuality, that his process is different from somebody else, that there is no answer here. Then I heard, who is it? Adam Driver. I'm not a huge Adam Driver fan. Talk about people who seem affected. But I don't think he's dishonest. Driver was being interviewed, again, amongst that many actors, and was saying something similar in that everyone's got to find it themselves. And the process doesn't, what he's got to do or how he's feeling about it and how he's got to work through it isn't going to be the same as somebody else. And went on at some length at it. And it was obvious, like he's a well-spoken person. It was obvious to me that he had really thought this through. He'd been thinking about it for a long time and trying to figure it out. And I like that. Which reminds me, this is I have many, but this is one of the weapons of choice. Why am I showing you this? Because the playing of this instrument, all right, and this is my daily player. Oh, for trumpet geeks, what is this? This is a Flip Oaks WT. It is a 470 board Canon. If you like the little finger buttons, they were done by Josh Landris, the man, the best of them all in New York City, which he did for me for a favor. And his store, this is a refinish. It was this was initially just a yellow brass. It was in yellow brass, and it's an over 20-year horn at this point. The only place they kept the lacquer was inside the bell. But Atis and the boys over there did a raw brass work on it, and they fixed it up and did some things to it, and they just did a great job on it. And it's one of my, it's how I like to start the day. It's a real trumpeter's trumpet. And I'm playing a stork on this because I play a lot of stork mouthpieces. I like storks very much. But why am I showing you the horn? Because trumpet is one of those instruments where it's a tough one. Because, well, everything that happens on a trumpet happens here, underneath the metal, and in your mouth, inside, and your whole body, the air, and the pressurizing the air, how the air this is the resonant cavity, and then this is really just an amplifier. Okay, but you can't see it. It's all happening underneath the metal. Most other people you can analyze very easily because you can see it. You can't see it with a trumpet. So it's all happening. You have to feel it and know. And trumpet teaching thus becomes a little tough because they're listening to the sound you get out. They're watching how hard you work. They can watch all the muscles around, which is maybe more important than what's going on here anyhow. But they can watch, and so the teaching goes that way. But there is agreement generally in broad strokes. There is agreement about the method by which you play that instrument, but there is also wide disagreement, and virtually every teacher you find and every method book you find, that person, that author, is convinced there's only one way. Obviously, my way. It's mind-numbing. That being said, there are some excellent teachers. Don't get me wrong. There are some, and I've availed myself of some. And I still do. I will, haven't done it in a couple of years, but every now and then I will go find a top player and say, I'm watching. Are you doing this when you do that? No, I do it this way. Well, oh yeah. And sometimes they surprise me. I still learn something new. I've been playing it since I was 9. I'm still learning stuff. And I love that aspect of my instrument. I love it. I learned in college from a bass player who was teaching a class and said that, playing an instrument was a lifelong process, that the learning was a lifelong process. To me at the time, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. But I do believe that. And I love the fact that I'm still learning things. And I feel like I'm still getting better. And I'm more complete and playing with a better sound and all sorts of things. But the idea that there is this method and that's it, and that there's an answer, not really. And it also depends on what you're going for. If there are studio players and they feel that that's it. That's the apex. That is the zenith. That that person can play anything, and that's what we should be. We should be musical machines able to perform anything. But man, there's lots of people. Leaves out Miles and Chet Baker, doesn't it? I don't want to live in a world without Miles and Chet Baker. Well, you don't have to, Dave. Yeah, oh, right, I know. But for those guys, you kind of do. One of my teachers in college, he was a pit musician in Boston. And he was not a nice guy. he was awful. And the only kind of playing that was real was the playing he did at the Schubert Theater in Boston. Everything else was... How do you win with that? And you don't. But I've run into that so many times. So many times. And it is incredibly dispiriting. In another place you see it is music theory. With music theory, you get the music theory police, who honestly believe that music for them is a scientific, both the people teaching it and the people teaching instruments, rather, instrumental playing. You've got that in that world too, and you've got it then in music theory world, who believe that it is it's a scientific endeavor, that there is a truth, and that we're going to reach this truth. Yeah, I've always thought music theory is music theory, not music truth. There is no music truth. But they're convinced that there is, and there's a proper way to analyze it, and any other way means you're a rank amateur. It's incredibly depressing, and it's just wrong-headed. And my own institution was at the vanguard of it, actually, because I saw some wonderful interviews where they were talking to, I think it was, trying to remember the guitar player. I don't know if it was Jim Hall or Joe Pass. Might have been Joe Pass. And they were talking about 2/5s, right? And Joe Pass said, yeah, I don't know about 2/5s. I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I don't think of it that way. And I never thought of it that way. And I learned that, I understand that was a nomenclature invented later on by music schools. And different music schools have different nomenclature, all sure that theirs is the correct one. I was at Berkeley, and there was a Berkeley way. There's still to this day people who will see chord changes written a certain way and will say, oh, you went to Berkeley, because Berkeley people write it that way. And if you went someplace else, you use different symbols actually express things. And then arguments ensue about what is the, and everyone, people joke about that and people will laugh, but it's there, which is kind of incredible. But there isn't, I think if you live long enough, maybe after all this time, maybe that's one of the lessons, maybe that's one of the good parts of all this, is that, there is no bedrock in the arts of like some landing place, right? You can't land on Jupiter, right? Because there's the ooze just gets thicker, but maybe there's a rock in the middle, but I mean, you could just as likely go right through and never hit the rock. I mean, there's no thing. You could be closer, but thinking there's a musical truth. And it leads to people writing, well, I've thought for a long time that the worst thing that happened to jazz for sure with jazz, was it became academicized. The rules of academe were applied to it. It must be studied like you were studying sociology or geology. It was another science to be dissected, and we would learn all the ways. We weren't talking about the meaning of the work, and they weren't talking about the emotional content of the work. We were only talking about how the nuclei bumped into each other in the collider. That was the discussion. I love music theory stuff. I love it. But it becomes very obvious that there are 20 ways to describe the same chord. If you just, you start to play with it long enough. Okay, is it this or is it something else? I remember we used to get into those discussions at college, and I thought those were fascinating. And the approach always was, well, yes, that can happen, but we're gonna look. No, we're gonna, for our purposes, it's gonna be this chord, and we're not gonna. Wait a minute. There's the juice. The juice is it could be all sorts of things, and the listener in the end is going to decide for themselves what the hell it is anyhow. There is no truth, and that the listener has to get the. What is it? This is some sort of, audio version of a pictogram or something. What? So those kind of things, there is one method, there is one way. Thank God there isn't. All the humanity is in the fact that there isn't. That's a thing to celebrate. It's not a problem to be solved. Oy. So, yeah. So is the Icelandic woman making jazz? It's pretty harmless. If you're all steamed up and angry at that, wow. And I'm sure there are a lot of jazz people who will be viciously upset that this person has popularity. She's got popularity. She's not bad. She's okay. Good for her. I don't see the harm. Look, some people can say, this is the great art of our time. Yeah, they're out of their minds, of course. Of course they're out of their minds. Try not to listen to them. Okay, so yes, we're musicians. We don't buy into the hysteria. Okay. And does that stuff go too far? Yes, it goes too far. And but don't let it get you too upset. Okay. At the same time, it's not sophisticated enough. Don't be a creep about it either. It's fine. It is what it is. Okay. And the idea that there's one method. I like music production and I enjoy it. And man, the audiophile people, right? There's a one way. There's only one way. And you've got to do it. All the fun happens when people come up with new ways. Sometimes because they're not educated enough, they didn't know not to do something. And you get a new. So yeah, play with the technology and stop worrying about there's the one and only way. There isn't a one and only way. We're all forging our own particular paths. It's cool. And it doesn't matter whether you're playing the horn or you're singing or you're it's okay. You don't have to follow someone else's idea of what the true path is. I'm not saying don't learn stuff from it, but I am saying just don't go down the rabbit hole. Just don't. Check it out. Get what you can out of it. Because there will be good stuff there. Take what you can that makes sense to you, that seems to apply, that seems to work. Reject the stuff that doesn't. Form your own things. Doesn't mean that you've come up with the answer for anybody else, because you haven't. You're an experimental one. You figure it out for yourself. Okay. And that's fine. That's the individual journey artist is supposed to be on, from a technical sense, but then also, what are we into? What are we hearing? What are we feeling? And it doesn't matter that much, is Laufey doing jazz? Well, jazz, jazz is dead. Jazz is not dead. Oh, it's terrible. There's jazz out there. Jazz, like anything, is connected to its time on some level. The jazz's time was the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and you can argue the 30s and 20s, right? I mean, those were its time, and it is connected to that. If you do a painting today, you're doing it in the style of Renoir. Are you really doing French Impressionism? Can French Impressionism even be done outside of that window of time when French Impressionism was in fact done? I don't think you can. All you could do is do something now with this world, where it's at and what this culture is up to. Do your own thing. Find something that applies to the now. That's it. I just think that's, that's a thing to shoot for anyway. So that's what I've got for you. Give me a like. Give me a listen. Give me something. What's interesting is I've heard from a couple people at this point, and it was really cool that there were a couple people digging what was going on here. Got a hold of me and was like, "Yo," I'm like, I had no idea. That's so cool. So yeah, feel free. I'll take it. I could use it. But we'll just keep chatting. And, if you sit there and go, Dave, I think you're full of it, feel free. Give me a comment. I'm all good. And, later in the week, I'm going to, something weird's going to happen. Something unusual is going to happen at the end of the week. And I'm not going to be here. So I think maybe the next video you see from me will be that I went someplace else for a couple days. And maybe I'll give you impressions. I'm going someplace I've never been before. And a place with some history. And I think it's going to be fun. So, so maybe I'll share some of that with you guys, which would be different for me, very different. But that's okay. Different's all right. I can do that. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks for your time. Later.